We learn a lot from others when we listen to what they have to say. These are things that are important to
I feel
them.
that in our office, we do a great job with connecting with our patients.
But we learn and share the information that we got in circles.
Our stories will impact our office.
I thought it was impactful when I heard the analogy of circles and rows.
That we can all come together as an office.
A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken.
That office will succeed, and we will have a positive impact on everyone in our office.
Hey guys, Dr. Odom here. Past couple of weeks we've been talking about questions that great leaders ask. We found out that great questions do a couple things. They reveal value, they reinforce value, and they reinforce behaviors. We talked about that for the past couple of weeks, and then in that discussion we started talking about the idea or the concept that circles are better than rows. What that means is rows are when one person is talking to a whole bunch of other people, teaching them, they're listening, they're sitting, they're taking notes. We use the imagery of rows because it reminds me of a classroom when the desks are lined up in rows and there's a teacher standing in front lecturing or giving notes, and the people are in the audience or in the classroom taking notes and trying to absorb the information, and they're learning it from that way. Circles are when people from those rows or from that audience come together in community, and then they talk about the things that were just learned. That's where they're able to talk about the big concepts, see where it applies to their life, their family's life, their children's life, all aspects of their environment. That's where the real growth happens. And that's what we talked about in part 2 of questions that great leaders ask, that circles are greater than rows. And the reason is because you cannot grow in a row. Rows are fantastic. That's where the learning happens. That's where it starts. That's the start spot. You take what you've learned, the information, if it's properly communicated, you take it into your circle or take it in your community of people, and that's where the true growth happens. That's just a quick review. If you need more on that, go check out the last video. So just to recap, circles are greater than rows. You can't grow in a row. And rows are, in your head, use the imagery of a classroom with a teacher standing in front and people in the audience taking notes and learning. In circles, they don't have to be lots of people. They don't actually have to be sitting in a circle. It's just a couple people coming together in community and talking about some information that was learned, telling each other stories, applying it, and see how the information affects them and the environment around them, asking the hard questions, sharing experiences, and sharing stories with each other. And that's where the true growth happens. You have to have rows to get the learning, but you have to take that learning from the rows, get into community with each other, get in a circle, and then talk it out. So this week we're going to continue talking about the ideal concept that circles are greater than rows. And as we're talking, I want you to think of the imagery or the statement that a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. So we're going to take that apart, we're going to deconstruct it, we're going to kind of put it back together, and we're going to see how we can add more cords or more strands to our rope so we can anchor people down to our truth that we're trying to teach them. If the information is communicated properly in rows, that information becomes, or that communication becomes an experience, and we feel it. Or what we want to do, if it becomes an experience, is take action on it together. That's what circles do. That's when you can come together and you can talk about it. You can come to some sort of action or do step next. Learning's great, but there's even more in doing from what you just learned. That's one of the great things about getting in community with each other or getting in the circles, is they facilitate action. You talk about things, you think about things, you come up with plans, you come up with action steps, and then you follow through, and then you're held accountable for the things you say you're going to do by the people that are in your circle or in your community. Our goal should not just be to get bigger or to have more sales or have more people come through the doors. Our goal should be to get people to grow and attach with what we do. And what we do here in the office, we have a different philosophy on health that we want people to attach to. We want them to take that information that they've attached to and grow with it. One of the questions or challenges I have for you guys this week is, why would we want people to actually, instead of just coming through the doors, focusing on that? The question I have for you is, why would we want patients to grow and attach to our health philosophy? So as we go through the week, I want you guys to think about that and think of its impact that it can have on you, and you can think about it on the practice members and people that come through the doors. To get people to grow and attach to our health philosophy, we have to get them out of rows. We have to get them into the row so they can learn the things they needed, so they can learn the health philosophy that we're trying to teach them. And then we have to get them out of the rows and into circles and communities with each other. Because you experience a sense of accountability and a sense of belonging in a circle. That's why it's so important. One example we talked about this past Wednesday when we had our get-together was, have you ever seen someone who comes to the office whose family is not supportive of their health decisions? Let's say their mom and their grandmother, for example, are against them or against the health philosophy that we're trying to teach the person. So what we're actually doing is we're taking that person out of their circle, out of their community, and we're bringing them over this way, which is beneficial for their health, which is what they need. But we've taken them out of the community and isolated them if we don't have another circle, or taken them out of their community and isolated them if we don't have another circle, community, or group to have them associated with. And then they start to lose that sense of accountability. But even more important is they start to lose that sense of belonging. We took them from the group and we've isolated them. And what that causes them to have negative feelings associated with the office, which have nothing to do with their health or the truth that we're trying to teach them. And we don't want to facilitate someone being isolated. People normally drift towards isolation anyway. We drift that way. It's in our blood. We're made that way for some reason. We always want independence, autonomy. People always want to drift towards isolation, independence, and autonomy. We actually seek it out. It's more of a drift. We actually consciously go for that. That's what we want in life. And when we take one person out of their community or their circle and we place them into our office or our idea or our philosophy on health, and we don't have a community or circle to put them into, that furthers the isolation, that furthers the autonomy, that furthers the drift away from wherever they were. And if someone drifts too far away without an anchor, they won't know where to go except for back to where they're familiar with, which in this example would be back with their family in that community and listen to what they say. And then the patient drifts away from us and then the health truth that we're trying to teach them. And then their health suffers for that. So we need to be their anchor. We need to have communities. We need to have circles. We need to have accountability and experiences for these people so we can anchor them down. So if they do start to drift away, they don't drift far enough where they get away from their true north. Because it's not about us in the office, it's about the person. Their health suffers. If we're not in community with each other, if we're not in groups, or if we're not in circles, it leads to negative emotions. Andy Stanley calls it like a low-grade anger. You don't even really know that it's there, but it's a constant low-grade anger. The more isolated we get, the more angry we become. And anger leads to isolation. So the more isolated we become, the more angry we become. The more isolated we become, the more angry we become. It becomes a vicious cycle that feeds off of each other. And it's not for the positive. We want to stop the isolation. We don't want to take people from their groups and their communities, place them in a situation, tell them something totally new, a new health truth, and not have a community, a group, a circle for them to belong to. Because community is the opposite of isolation. If we could stop that isolation process, we can decrease the drift that people experience. We can keep them on true north. If we can keep them in community with each other, we can decrease the isolation, and we can decrease the amount of drift that people have and get them drifting off the true path that they need to go on for their health. And that's what's really important because they benefit from it in the long run. The next challenge I have for you throughout the week is look for patients who seemed all in and then now are starting to drift away from the true north. Their anchor is starting to slip a little bit, and see if it's because of something that's happening at home. Close note of that and watch these people drift away. Instead of calling them, hitting them with facts about their health, that's not going to work. What we need to do is those people that are drifting, have taken them out of their community and they're starting to drift back into their own, we need to get them together with other people in the office that have been through the same thing they have. Let them share stories with each other and experiences. If you can't find anybody to connect that person with, we have to be the circle. We have to be the community for that person, that they can lean on us and know that we're always here for them. We'll be that anchor in health for them. So remember, community is the opposite of isolation. When we isolate ourselves, we tend to think that we're autonomous, that there's no one around us that affects us. But the more isolated we get, the more silly decisions that we make. Anytime we get in trouble when we think we're isolated, it never just affects us. Every time that you think you're isolated and you make a decision based off a low-grade anger or fear of isolation or not being in community with each other, it always impacts somebody else. Another challenge I have for you guys as we go through the week is think about the people that are drifting away from us, who are isolated, do not feel like they're in community, and I want you to think about the people that it's impacting besides them. This person's health's declining. Who in their circle, who in their life, who in their family, which friends is that going to affect for the years to come? Because we never get in trouble by ourselves. There's always people that we impact. So that being said, that's why one of the last challenges I have for you guys this week is, what circles are we in right now? Us as a team, we need to be in community. We need to be in circles. We need to have support as well, so we don't start feeling isolated. We don't start drifting off our true north. Or the main challenge that I have for you guys is to think about how can we get our patients into circles and communities with each other. Come together as a team, dialogue about it, try to figure out some ways. It doesn't have to, when you think of circle, it doesn't have to be 15 or 20 people sitting around an actual circle. It just needs to be 1 or 2 people or more come together, talking with each other, supporting each other, being there for each other, telling each other stories, sharing experiences, talking about complex ideas, trying to make them simple for each other. If you can think of a way that we can bring our practice members together like that, let me know. That's the big question I'm trying to figure out, is how can we bring more of our practice members in community with each other so they can have support, the circles that they need. We can break the chain of isolation. We can break the chain of isolation and give them a place where they can feel at home and comfortable. At the beginning of this, I wanted you to think in the background of this whole talk that a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. So what circles do is they add more strands to your cord so that the anchor is not broken away, and then we don't drift away from our true north, okay? So this whole time, all these questions I have for you, we're trying to add more and more strands to our cord so our anchor can stay centered where it needs to be. Because remember, people's health depend on us, and they can't live their sole purpose unless they're healthy. So we really have to be intentional. We really have to focus so we can bring people. We really have to be intentional so we can get people off the drift back on the straight arrow. Thanks, guys.
And it makes me proud of myself, and it makes me love the things that Dr. Odom does with us, because that's what I want. That's what I feel my sole purpose is, to change people's lives and make them feel like they're a better person. Anything is possible if you just do it. Some people don't realize that, and I'm glad that I can open people's eyes and help them learn how to become better people.